Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, we are reporting out of closed session. We have one item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, council reporting out of closed session this evening is one item. The motion is to receive the report and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Council, would someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Gilliland, seconded by Councillor Kim. Mr. Clerk, record a vote.
Record a vote's been requested for the only item of council reporting out of closed session this evening. Councillor Gallo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland? Councillor Gilliland?
Councillor Gilliland, I need you to unmute. Councillor Gilliland? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Did you get that,
Hello?
Mr. Clerk?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Gilliland, how do you vote?
Is this for the first item? Sorry, I was frozen.
Sorry, it's for council reporting out of closed session, the only item on the closed session agenda this evening.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't see Councillor Humphreys yet. Councillor Gartner, you just signed in. How do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
Yes.
And Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Confirming bylaw. Someone like to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Gilliland, seconded by Councillor Kim. All those in favor? Show of hands. Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kim. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. All right, we'll start our next one. Council, Mr. Clerk. The time is 7:02. We'll call this general committee meeting to order. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Gilliland, seconded by Councillor Gallo, and I have clapping hands. Point of order. Councillor Thompson, point of order.
Thank you. Is Councillor Gardner online?
Yes, she is.
I just can't get my picture yet. Sorry.
That's fine. Councillor Gardner, I'm sorry, but in my opinion, your notice of motion is not in order and should not be on the agenda. In my view, it's ultra virus. You state in your motion that you want us to hold the provincial government accountable, and yet we have no legal authority to do so. Being accountable means you have an obligation to explain or justify something, and the provincial government is not obliged to do anything for this council. Furthermore, the motion refers to an identifiable individual. It doesn't identify any provincial policies or legislation, pending or passed, or specific issues for us to weigh in and or consider. Instead, it relates to the comments of an individual, albeit the premier, who has no mechanism to provide context for statements or respond during the debate. And while I understand your desire to see institutional change, I do not feel this is the way to proceed.
Councillor Thompson, thank you. I'm going to have to agree. My ruling is I'll agree with your point of order. I think that the motion is out of order. It is ultra virus, and so then I will agree with your point of order. So, council, I will move forward with a motion which we have on the table to approve the agenda minus the point of order, and with the ruling of the chair, the motion will be removed. If there are no other, Councillor, I will only recognize you. There's only one reason is you're challenging the ruling of the chair as per the procedural bylaw. If you are not challenging the chair, then there is no comment at this time.
The ruling then.
You're challenging my ruling?
I am.
Okay,
I believe the intent of the motion, perhaps the wording isn't correct, but I believe the intent of the motion is to send council support down to the Premier that we approve of, in this case, it would be an independent review. So is there a way to rework this so that we can send the Premier the message that we're in support?
well, and Councillor, there is, and that's why I agreed with the point of order. I would ask that you restructure your motion and put in a new notice of motion. The notice of motion that was in front of us, I've agreed that it's ultra vires. So if you want to, by all means, if you want to restructure it and put in a motion that is not considered to be ultra vires, then it will be accepted.
Thank you. And from what you said, I would have to go and do a new notice of motion? Or can it be
Correct.
changed for? Thank you.
Thank you. Are you still challenging the ruling?
I agree with what Councillor Thompson has said, and that wasn't my intent, so I'll put in a new notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor. And if you want, you can work with the clerk. I'm sure he'll help you with some of the wording, or if you want, you can call me. We can sit down and get the essence of what you're trying to capture, and we can
Thank you.
go through that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So council, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have no community presentations, delegations. We do have one. Mr. Michael Tsetsaguza. And I probably pronounced that wrong, but we'll let him tell me. Michael, thank you for coming. I hope I didn't do too bad of a job on the last name.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's a tongue twister.
Okay. So you're here in regards to item R1, the application for official plan amendment. Just to let you know, you have 5 minutes. And I know council just received the presentation by email as well. So council, if you want to pull that up. Mr. Clerk, is that going to come up on our feed, the presentation? In case anyone can't pull, I just want to make sure everyone is going to be able to view this presentation.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. We'll do a screen share here in a second.
Thank you. So Michael, 5 minutes and floor is yours.
Okay. Would you like me to share my screen? I do have the presentation up here.
No, I think our clerk is going to share that for everyone. It'll come up and it'll be available for the public as well.
Okay. Okay. I'm assuming I should wait for that to pop up first.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just a little change up here. Michael, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen, I think that's what we practice. So please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Not a problem. Not a problem.
Thanks.
Throw me
Sorry
for a
about
loop.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Not a problem at all.
So I'll wait for you to get that up, Michael, and then you can begin.
Okay. So hopefully everybody can see this now.
Yeah. Can everyone see that? Just nod your heads. Can everyone got the screen?
Okay. So I'll get going. So
All right.
hopefully my 5 minutes hasn't started yet. So name's
go ahead.
Michael Testaguza from the Bigley Area Group. I will go quickly to keep us under 5. We have Vince Baffa representing the client here, as well as Tony Biglieri from our firm as well. So I'm sure everyone's fairly familiar with the site. So I'm just going to go over quickly the context, because it is in a very interesting location. Estate residential to the north here, focused on Hunter's Glen Road. Cluster residential to the west here, the Davina Court development here, and then the approved and not yet under construction Ashland subdivision here per the cluster residential designation. You have Richmond Hill south of Bloomington Road here, higher density, single detached again on the south side there. And then you have more cluster residential to the east of the site with a large EP block, right? A large wood lot here. So that's the context of the site. Now, formerly contained estate residential lots, 6 of them, but obviously 10 hectares now. Moving on, everybody's well aware of the planning context, having seen the report. If there's any questions about this, I'm happy to go back to it, but I'll skip over it for now and go right into the draft plan. So draft plan has 50 units in it, ranging in size. 70 feet are the yellow lots you can see here. 54 feet are the pink along the south and east corner. Connections to Yonge Street through the Ashland subdivision in the northwest, and connection to Bloomington down here in the south. Large environmental protection block in the middle to protect that wood lot, as well as the Kettle wetland features here, and further block over here to the north. So that's a general run through of the draft plan. Now, did want to quickly run through some changes that were made to the draft plan between the previous public meeting today. Most importantly, you'll see the red here, lotting fabric. That's the old lotting fabric. And the green shows areas that were previously developable land that have now been given over to either environmental purposes or parkland. So parkland here and environmental here through here, as well as a buffer here. What this allows, and it was a specific request of council, is for a wildlife corridor from this environmental feature central to our site to allow little critters to pass through there and move up to that larger woodlot or vice versa. So that change has been made, 13% decrease in developable area, 13% increase in environmental protection area. With regards to streetscape, there wasn't specific intent to try to augment the streetscape here. So at the entrance to the site at Old Bloomington, we actually have a 23-meter right-of-way, which is well above the 18-meter minimum requirements of the town. What that allows is that huge central landscape median that's going to be an entry feature to the subdivision to be provided right at the entrance. The other thing we're doing from a streetscape perspective is the proposal to increase the height from 10 to 11 meters. And these are the comparative elevations here. You can see that the reason this is being done to enhance the streetscape is really these are very wide units, and the proportion of the roof pitch is just not quite on there with the lower roof pitch on the 10 meters. So that was the proposal, and it was really from a streetscape perspective. In terms of benefits, we've talked about environmental protection. We've talked about the provision of the park block in the northeast corner of the site, which was not there previously. We've talked about the lot decrease. What we haven't talked about yet is the transition. So along the northern portion of the site here, you have a 10-meter landscape buffer. That's to be protected through zoning as well as a restrictive covenant. On top of that, you have a 17-meter setback from the rear property line to the first units, also protected through the zoning. The intention there is to make sure that the units along that northern interface are set back from the estate residential. Further to that, along the northern property line here, the closest estate residential property is 50 meters distant from the property line. So we're talking about 67.5 meters at a minimum separation from estate res to building on one of our lots. So we think that that definitely meets the intent of the transition policies in the OP. Lastly, and this is the last slide, so I'll just go over it quickly. With regards to the zoning, at the last public meeting and thereafter, we've heard two concerns with regards to the proposed coverage and the proposed height in the zoning bylaw amendment. With regards to coverage, we're asking for 40 and made it known in that past public meeting. The intent really for that 40 is to allow more bungalow products. So we have a preset bungalow product to fit on more of the lots. So we think that's a community benefit to allow for seniors housing and more affordable housing, obviously, on the site. Now, that being said, we do know that it was a concern previously, and we wanted to let it be known that if council was amenable and they thought that this was a better solution, we would be fine with 40% coverage only on those lots which I've indicated as R3XX5. Those are the smallest lots where we can't fit that bungalow product, certainly without the 40% exception. So that would be the most targeted and well-placed if we were to come to a middle ground on the coverage perspective. Similarly, from a height perspective, we thought it would be reasonable if there was concerns about providing 11 meters across the site to locate that 11-meter height along the southern portion of the site. The reason for that is the homes on Davina Court to the west here are actually 13 meters or have permission for that. And the homes in Richmond Hill, 11 meters. So it makes sense that the 11 meters wouldn't be out of context at all in the southern portion here. Whereas in the northern portion of the site, adjacent to the estate residential lots, 10 meters could be considered more appropriate or reasonable in that context. Now, obviously, we wouldn't look for the 11 meters where we are asking also for the 40% coverage. So that is, again, if a reasonable compromise on our end. We think if council isn't necessarily inclined to provide 40% coverage and 11 meters across the entire site. The only other thing I would note is that we have spoken to the residents to the north, as well as with staff. And obviously both parties, residents and staff, are comfortable with the 11 meters and the 40% coverage. So there is that to consider on that frontage as well. And last thing I'll say is we're here to answer any questions. Happy to help out. And Tony, myself, and Vince are all here to respond. And I would note, just because we're in this new world, that once we're off the Zoom chat, we're off the Zoom chat. So this is the chance to ask questions, clarification or otherwise. And I'll stop sharing my screen now, or would everybody like me to keep it on so I can flip back and forth?
Michael, I would say just leave it on for if there's any questions at this point. That way, in case someone wants to point to a specific screen. So thank you for that, Michael. Council, before I ask for any comments or questions, can I get a motion to receive and refer to R1? Anybody?
Mr. Mayor, I've got my hand up.
Oh, okay. Councillor Humphreys. I guess I was frozen. Sorry. Councillor Humphreys seconded. Councillor Gill.
I had it up too.
Yeah, sorry. Councillor Kim. Technology, it freezes on us, right? Councillor Kim, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Michael, for the presentation, and thank you for the plans. Looks like compared to the plans that we looked at 2 years ago, you have made some changes. I think the main ones were the 35% coverage and the 11-meter height, as well as the concerns about the water wells. I think the flexibility you've given in that having the bungalows, which don't necessarily need the 11-meter height, in the R3 XX5 area, that certainly provides a solution. And with respect to the lot coverage, the bungalows again would be the 40%, and that would be up in the northern corridor. And given that, hearing from the local ratepayers, and they are in agreement with your remediation plan, I think that's great. I think the last thing was that we discussed, you guys were going to monitor pre-development, during development, and post-development about any items or issues that might occur because of development towards the septic tanks and the water wells that are existing in Hunter's Glen and the state properties in the north. We discussed, whether we can extend the 2-year post remediation plan to something longer, which was about perhaps 5 years. And you'll work that out with staff. Is that still on the table?
Certainly, yeah, I can speak to that. We're certainly happy to work with staff on the ins and outs of exactly how the monitoring plan will work, as well as to work with them to establish, at least on a preliminary basis, how any potential issues could be mitigated in the interim or over the long term. So I think conditions 16 and 17 speak to that monitoring, and we're definitely willing to work with staff to discuss when after monitoring should stop, and 5 years is certainly reasonable on our end. I don't know, Vince, if you have anything to add to that.
Vince?
You're muted, Vince.
There you go, Vince.
Okay. No, that's acceptable.
Councillor Kim?
No, that's great. And the fourth item that was brought up 2 years ago was the wildlife corridor, and you guys decreased the developable area by 13%, which you discussed in your presentation. And so that you guys accommodated us in that way. So I don't have any further issues or any questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Gardner? Comments, questions to the delegate?
Thank you. My question was going to be about the well monitoring and the agreement on that. Thank you, Councillor Kim.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gilliland? I'm gonna need you to, yeah, can you mute it for yourself?
Yeah, got it.
Thank
All right. Thank you through Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I definitely like the fact that you guys have revisioned the ask from the public comments. It was something that I had gone through and I was really impressed with that. And I understand the water table is at 20 meters above the water table. Was that, could you confirm that again?
Yeah, so the deepest service that we have is 20 meters above the water table. So the water table would be even further below our finished grade. The closest our servicing comes to the to the water table is 20 meters above.
Perfect. And thank you. And when you had said you had talked to the residents, that was the Ratepayers Association raise that you have been speaking with, and you've had some pretty good conversations there in agreement with the new revisions?
Exactly, yes.
Perfect. So I'm trying to find my notes and I kind of lost my, of course it
Not a
happens
problem.
now, right? So I think I had a conversation earlier about the wooded area and how all the major woodlots are being protected, and I was really impressed about that. And I know that you're going back and asking more about the small clusters. Have you been given any other opportunity to find a little more information about that since we last had a conversation about that?
You know what, I did look into it, and I had some additional info insofar as I did find our restoration monitoring plan, preliminary as it is, being kind of a draft plan requirement rather than detailed designs that will come later. So that plan did speak to a mix in terms of the compensation planting, mix of both larger trees and smaller trees. And now that plan had referred to them by height. And I know that the town policy deals with caliper width, but in any event, I can confirm that that plan already spoke to providing a mix of both larger and smaller trees. And really, I think that it pointed to the fact that discussion would need to happen with staff and LSRCA about where the best locations are to plant larger caliper trees, let's say. So it's certainly something we're open to and amenable to, and I understand perfectly the reasons for mixing and providing a little bit of both, because I've been given to understand that there are some benefits to smaller caliper trees on the other side as well. So we're certainly willing to provide that mix and make sure that the larger caliper trees are well represented and appropriately represented. So we're happy to work with staff on that. But unfortunately, I don't have any more concrete details, just because it really comes down to more detailed plans that will come with the engineering submissions.
Okay, perfect.
Counselor?
Thank you. Yes, and I believe you said the approved 13 meters at the DeVito site is adjacent to you, and then south was 11 meters. So in context that you were kind of in and around the same height, so you weren't really encroaching too much on, I guess, a real diverse height difference. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. The residence on Davina Court, which is just to the west of us. If you can imagine, sorry, I'm pointing at the screen, but you obviously can't see that. Maybe now you can see my mouse. Down here where the cul-de-sac is, just to the west, there are the homes that are 13 meters. And then to the south of us is 11 meters in Richmond Hill. Whereas over here on the north is Hunter's Glen. That's where the 10-meter heights are permitted. So certainly if the southern portion of the draft plan, or a portion of the southern portion, was to be granted 11 meters height, it certainly wouldn't be visible from the estate residential subdivision to the north, and would be very much in keeping with the context on the southern portion of the site.
Great. And I really think it's a great compromise to isolate the blocks based on that 10 meter to 11 meter adjustment. So it in context with the adjacent properties to the north. I just want to thank you for including bungalows in your plan, because everybody needs a bungalow. And again, combining it to that one block really does isolate it and make it a lot easier for zoning purposes as well. And the lots are a lot smaller. And I do support giving a little more coverage for bungalows because they are needed. And there's a lot of people out there that really would appreciate that. So I'm happy about that. One last question was about the stormwater management. And I know that you have the stormwater management kind of designed for the 100-year storm, and maybe that's all that's required, but I just want to know if you had any further thoughts about that, considering we're in a time where we're trying to boost our infrastructure to be prepared more for like the 200-year storm and plus.
Certainly. So I actually did speak with our servicing engineer on that. We are required to plan for the 100-year storm per TRCA, LSRCA, and town standards. And generally speaking, they only plan above that when it's a floodplain concern. And because we're so high above the water level and not near any water courses, there aren't any flooding concerns on this site. And hence, from an engineering perspective, it wasn't required. But my engineer did want me to point out, of course, there's engineering factors in everything. So there is, on top of the 100-year storm, an engineering factor worked into that. And it's called freeboard. So there is additional protection above the 100 worked into this. But generally, engineering standards wouldn't require anything above that unless there was a floodplain issue. And there's no flooding concerns in this area.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, I muted myself because I was getting feedback. So that's great additional information. I really like the fact that you've gone kind of above and beyond and identified that you're not on a floodplain and you're protecting the wetlands, which is something that's so near and dear to our hearts, especially with climate change and adaptation, is protecting your wetlands. And I'm really happy about that. And also, I just kind of wanted to confirm that you did kind of have mentioned you're providing a lot. I know it's like not specific, but at least 20% more trees and shrubs at this point that you can confirm is something that you guys are aiming towards to kind of go above and beyond kind of what you're supposedly providing.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, certainly. So the proposal is that we will provide 20% more compensation planning in comparison to tree removals. Obviously, there's going to be tree removals in the open fields. Now, there won't be tree removals within the actual environmental feature, but there will be tree removals in the remainder of the site, and 20% more trees will be planted than removed, in addition to, of course, whatever's required to meet the town's compensation policies. And I know that doesn't work on a quantity basis, but it works on the tree caliper basis. So it's a different way to look at it, but it is something that's mentioned in our compensation planting plan. And it'll be, designed that way going forward when we go through detailed design.
Councillor?
Great, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Just first of all, I'm happy to see that the changes that you've made that I would have brought up when the report came up, asking staff, the various questions that you've already answered, and specifically, the lot coverage and the height. So I'm glad to see that some work was done. I did watch the public planning meeting and listen carefully to all of council's comments and the public's comments, and it looks like you've done a really good job to address them. The only two things that I did want to ask in terms of, I'm okay with the 40% coverage on the R3 XX5 provided bungalows are put there. So I assume within the subdivision agreement, there'll be some stipulations that only bungalows can be built on those lots, given the fact that we've given permission for 40% coverage. Is that your understanding?
Michael?
Go ahead, Michael. Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure if anybody was jumping in. Not quite, and it's a good point, and it's a good point to clarify. The way we're conceptualizing in all of this really is it's all mix and match. So the larger lots in this subdivision can already accommodate bungalows at the 35%, a majority of them. So theoretically, there could be a bungalow on lot 47 in the southeast corner, or a bungalow in lot 35 in the northeast. And that will depend on the purchasers and whether they want to purchase a bungalow on that lot or whether they want the two-story product on that site. But in those smaller lots that we had identified, bungalows were in essence, the bungalow products we have developed are just non-compatible with the lot sizes. But once you bump that up to a 40%, those bungalow products again become options in that area. So we're not looking to say that those lots are going to be exclusively bungalows, but now a much greater percentage of the lots on the draft plan can accommodate bungalows, which ultimately will mean more bungalows on the entire draft plan.
Councillor?
And that's okay. I guess the trigger should be, in my view, the reverse, that if you were to put a two-story home on one of those lots, that the 40% coverage shouldn't apply. And there should be some type of trigger there that if it's a bungalow, 40% is absolutely fine. If it's not a bungalow, it should remain the 35%. That's kind of where I was getting at.
Understood.
So I guess I'll ask staff as well to address that once
Yeah.
that comes.
And you know what? We do have Vince on here. I mean, if Vince wants to comment on that. Sorry, Councillor Gallo, not to cut you off anyway, but.
Yeah, I don't mind taking a look at it on that context. Again, we really wanted to have, if we looked at it, was the 40% was only limited to, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, it's only about 15 out of the 50 lots.
Something close to that. Yeah, exactly. I think it was 60.
It's a very, very small section that it's limited to.
Okay, thank you. The only other thing is, and I may have missed it in the report, Councillor Kim mentioned the 2 years commitment towards the monitoring of the well water, and 5 was also mentioned tonight. I didn't see any of those in the report, particularly the 2, if it's changed to 5. You know, it's not my practice to be negotiating in a public forum, but just, you know, I don't know whether 2 is right. I don't know whether 5 is right. I don't know whether 7 is right, but just wanted to communicate that you know, I prefer to have staff take a look and advise on what the best scenario is for that in order to protect the residents.
Certainly. The report, you're quite right, actually doesn't speak to 2, 5, 7, 100. It doesn't speak to the specific numbers. The report provides a very general condition stating the monitoring will be required pre, during, and post. And the discussion was simply where would be the appropriate location for post. So we're of course happy to take staff's direction on what post would mean.
Great, thank you very much. Great work.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And actually, one of my questions was just answered. And I just wanted to thank you know, the developer that they have come through in terms of the changes as we discussed earlier. And one of the comments I wanted to make was that I know that, you know, you're looking for 40% lot coverage overall proposed residential. I think just based on the way it looks, and I've actually been lucky enough to walk around the area because I live very close to there right now. I can see why it would make sense in terms of the estates around the property. So I'm fine, really, Mr. Mayor. I reckon my questions were answered, and I just wanted to thank the developer for listening. And I'm getting some feedback, so that's all my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Any other comments or questions for the delegate? I'm just going to add a few points. That Michael, Vince, Anthony, thank you so much. I know that original public planning meeting, I specifically said to you guys and as well as to the public that if you guys didn't come back with any changes or any modifications, especially to the lot coverage and to the height, that it would be a no. You guys came, we had a discussion, we worked very hard. I think that you listened to my concerns and also as well as council, and we worked very hard. And I think we got to a point that I think that we've come to a compromise. There's still a few things I think that we can work as we move through this, but we'll see how our item R1 goes. But once again, thank you for hearing those concerns. When I told you guys that the lot coverage and the height is a big sticking issue with this council and with our residents, you heard us and you made some modifications. And so I thank you for making those modifications and making the ratepayers in the area happy with what's being presented today. So thank you for that. Thank you for the presentation. So thank you, gentlemen. I guess you'll have to watch R1 on a different screen. So thank you very much for coming. So council, that said, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of receiving and referring? Opposed? That carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, council, there is no consent agenda. Advisory committee meeting minutes, none. Consideration of items requiring discussion. We're at the regular agenda. We will move to R1, which is what we were just speaking about. R1 is the applications for official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision for 132 to 198 Old Bloomington Road. There's a recommendation that report number PDS 20-033 be received and that the official plan amendment application OPA-2017-05 be approved to amend section 3.62 of OPA 34, which permits a maximum building coverage of 12% for lands within a cluster residential designation by adding a site-specific policy to permit a maximum building coverage of 20% for the subject lands. And B, amend section 3.6.3C of OPA 34, requiring a minimum separation distance of 35 meters between the estate residential designation and the lot line of any cluster residential unit by adding a site-specific policy that reduces the setback to 35 meters between a dwelling in the estate residential designation and a dwelling in the cluster residential designation, which includes a 10-meter landscaped buffer. And C, delete section 3.2.7 of OPA 34 that requires a block plan be approved prior to the approval of an application to permit new development within the areas identified on Schedule CC. And 3, that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-2017-07 be approved to rezone the subject lands from the state residential zone to detached third density residential exception zone, detached third density residential exception zone, detached third density residential R3 exception zone, detached third density residential exception zone, environmental protection, Oak Ridges Moraine zone, public open space zone, and private open space zone. And 4, that draft plan of subdivision application sub-2017-03 be approved, subject to the conditions listed in Schedule A to this report, and that council grant an allocation of 161 persons from the reserve to service the development of 50 single detached dwellings on the approved draft plan of subdivision. And 6, that the implementing official plan and zoning bylaw amendments be brought forward to a future council meeting. That was a mouthful. Council, anyone would like to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Humphrey, seconded by Councillor Gilliland. Comments or questions?
Can you reread clause 2 again, Mr. Mayor?
You're serious? Because I'll read it.
No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say that this development doesn't meet the strict parameters that were put in place by the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan and our own OPA 34. So that is disappointing. I would like to thank our residents, John Green and Warren McClure, who spent months working on this with the developer and with staff to come up with some important changes. So I thank them, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Having gone through this report and getting a little history on it, I feel really comfortable moving forward with all the revisions that the developer has done to kind of satisfy the residents, ratepayers, as well as council's request in the previous term as well. I would like to see the change, though, recommendation that was outlined in the new presentation with the coverage for 40% designated to zone R3, which is stated as the XX5 on his map, and as well as the height restrictions as located as R3 XX1 and R3 XX4 zones. That's closer to the northern end. I really feel that should be added to the recommendation we have on the floor to ensure that I guess that satisfies everybody within the neighborhoods.
So thank you, Councillor. Mr. Waters, can we just make those changes? Because I think that we're all in agreement that that's what we were getting. So can we just make those changes in the recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we can make those changes as presented in the applicant's presentation when we bring back the implementing zoning bylaw to you at the end of June.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor, the necessary changes that we've heard will be made and brought before us when the bylaw comes to us at council. So if they're not, then we would vote it down. So, but staff will make those necessary changes. Is that
perfect?
Good?
That was kind of the point I was trying to make. I think I've asked all my questions and got them answered by the delegate. As for staff, I guess the only question I would have would be about the stormwater management. If Mr. Waters, you can confirm that's the 100-year storm was the, I guess, the minimum requirement from a Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority. I think it is, but I just wanted you to confirm that.
Mr. Waters?
Mr. Mayor, I have a bad connection, so hopefully you can hear me. Yes, the 100-year storm is the traditional benchmark that is used. Sorry.
I was just gonna say you're very choppy. I don't know if everyone else hearing him the same way I am. Is it very choppy? You're choppy. Very, very choppy. It's very difficult to hear you.
I think I have a weak connection somewhere. I'll try to answer the councillor's question. Yes, the 100-year storm is the benchmark that is used to determine stormwater management requirements at the Conservation Authority.
Okay, so from what I think you said is that yes, it meets the requirement of the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority, and that's the minimum requirement is the 100-year storm. Is that correct?
I think that's what I heard too, Councillor Gilliland. But Mr. Waters, is that correct? If you want to just nod, maybe that might help on that one.
It's correct, yes.
It's correct. There we go.
Perfect. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Kim. Oh, one sec. You have to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As mentioned in my questioning to the planner for the developer, I just wanted to make clear in terms of the water well mitigation. Through you to Mr. Waters, what is a reasonable time frame with regards to mitigation, water table mitigation timelines? Would 5-year be sufficient, 7? And I know that, for the interest of time, that's not something that we can, discuss and put pen to paper tonight. But is that something that you could work with the developer and before the finalization and work a mitigation strategy out?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The draft plan condition currently drafted states it to be done on a yearly basis. Typically, I believe that's the model that was used in Highland Gate, if I'm not mistaken. Typically, it's undertaken for 2 years after construction is finished. So that's typically the average that is implemented throughout the GTA. But I think for now, the draft plan condition can go forward as is, and then when we finalize the subdivision agreement, we can then focus in on a appropriate timeline.
Councillor Kim, did you get that?
I think what I heard was that Mr. Waters could work with the developer with an appropriate timeline. I think he said 5 years, and they can work with regards to the mitigation strategies before the subdivision agreement. Is that what I heard, Mr. Waters?
Mr. Waters, is that correct? Mr. Waters? We might have lost Mr. Waters.
Maybe he should just turn off his camera and just leave the mic on.
Yeah. Mr. Waters, is that better? If you leave the camera off.
Can you hear me?
Vaguely.
Vaguely, wow. Sorry, Councillor Kim, I difficulty hearing you. You were choppy coming through my connection. There really is. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Waters, maybe if you disconnect and reconnect, that might help. And then I know it's going to be difficult because I know Councillor Gallo and Councillor Gardner have a few more comments and questions, but I don't think anyone's getting any information out of what's being said right now because it's just difficult to hear you. So
yeah, I think just to continue that thought, I mean, I had discussed with Michael, the planner for his client in the previous week, and raised the concern about what Mr. McClure, Mr. Green, you know, and the Ratepayers Association of Hunters Glen have itemized 2 years ago, and had a concern continuously. And one of the main concerns was about the water well, and they were happy to hear that the developer was willing to go up to 5 years in terms of a mitigation strategy. And if staff's, if the developer is willing to go even longer, that's great. But the developer, I guess the key point is the developer is willing to negotiate, whether it be 5 years or 7 years, so long as, they don't want to be responsible for something that another neighboring development, may be causing some other issues. So long as there are some, ground rules in place and some variables and some just something to just confirm that if there are any items that come up in the future, that it can be attributable to them as opposed to another development or some natural causes. But in the end, they're willing to negotiate that and go as far as 5, maybe even 7 years. So as long as staff is willing to keep on talking to them about that, I'm fine.
Okay. Councillor Kim, I think Mr. Waters is left. He's going to be coming back. So Councillor Gallo, you're next. Did you have is it for Mr. Waters, or did you just want to make a comment right now?
It's for Mr. Waters along the same lines of what Councillor Kim was referring to.
Okay, so how about we just, Councillor Gardner, did you have a question for Mr. Waters, or did you have a comment?
I had a question for Mr. Waters as well.
Does anyone have any comments while we wait for Mr. Waters? Otherwise, I mean, maybe I should just take a recess while we wait for Mr. Waters to come back. We'll take a 5-minute recess. All right, Mr. Clark, 5-minute recess.
Oh.
Oh, they want to recess, okay. What? I'm sorry, what? Yeah. Don't-
Mr. Waters? Mr. Waters? We're still live, but can we, do you want to test that out? Mr. Waters, can you hear me? Mr. Waters? Mr. Waters, can you hear me?
Yes,
All right. I just want to make sure we're still live, but I just want to make sure before everyone comes back that that everything's working fine. So I think it's much better now. So we'll.
yes, no, I think I was in a lead line room actually, Mr. Mayor. Like a
Okay.
bunker or something, so.
Okay. Well, all right. Is everyone, council, is everyone done? We'll resume. Well, there's four of us. Councilor Gallo, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just, along the same lines as actually, maybe you could go over it again now that we can hear you in terms of answering Councillor Kim's question on how we address, how you see us addressing this issue.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I assume, Councilor Gallo, I assume you're speaking to the well monitoring?
Yes.
Yes. So the draft plan condition, the way it's drafted at the moment, requires for well monitoring to be undertaken pre-development, during construction, and post-development. And there is no end date as to the monitoring in terms of taking place. It says yearly. And so we haven't determined that it will end at some point in time. My expectation is that between now and when we have the final subdivision agreement, we will specify when the well monitoring is to take place in terms of an end date. Typically it's 2 years after construction is finished. I haven't heard of 5 to 7, but I think at the end of the day, we will arrive at a reasonable period of time once construction is finished.
And
Counselor?
is that something, through you, Mr. Mayor, something that will come before council when it comes before us for our approval?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, typically not. It is a technical condition.
Counselor?
Okay. I think I would have preferred, because I mean, in speaking to the residents, in seeing some communication, they're looking for some guarantee that a reasonable amount of time is somewhat etched in stone that will satisfy them. I know they've been communicating with the developer as well to have that. So my view is we should establish that. I don't see a reason why we couldn't. Whatever industry practices is, we could certainly codify that. Secondly, in terms of, let's say something is found within that time frame, and it does say that the owner is responsible. Oftentimes, and maybe it's a legal question, oftentimes these developments are done under, a separate corporation name, and sometimes, I'm not suggesting it will happen here, it's difficult to go after someone that, once the development is done, that corporation no longer exists. So is there some recourse in terms of holding the larger corporation responsible if something was to go wrong?
Mr. Waters, did you want to answer that, or do you want to pass that along to Patricia?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take a shot at it, and then Mr. Serio can supplement my response from a legal perspective. Typically, through you, Mr. Mayor, we would ask for security regarding well monitoring. So if something did go wrong and there was a requirement to bring potable water in or to mitigate, we would draw on that security if the applicant did not respond in time.
Counselor?
How do we determine the amount of that security is?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have a number at the moment, but it'll be sufficient enough to protect the town and to protect the residents to the north.
Counselor?
Okay. So I guess as long as, I don't know if everyone is in agreement, but prior to council meeting and adopting this, if a number can come forward, I think that will be helpful. I know the residents were also looking for that.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Waters, can we get that number before council?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, we can have a number for you. Yes.
Thank you. Counselor, is that all? Thank you. Counselor Gardner, second time. 1 sec. Sorry. There you go.
Thank you. Lake Simcoe would have looked at this in 2017. I imagine the 100-year storm requirement is still the same, but have they been contacted recently about this application, or are they aware of the changes that have been made?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the Lake Simcoe has been an active partner in the review of this application. There would have to have been resubmissions, I believe, of a couple studies regarding the EIS study and also some stormwater requirements as well. So they would have been an active participant and recently issued draft plan conditions to allow us to move forward and present this application to you for approval.
Thank you.
That's all, Counselor?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gallo, go ahead, second time.
Thank you. I forgot to ask about lot coverage on those sections that were 40% and are proposed to be bungalows. Through you to Mr. Waters, is there a trigger that we can implement, as I mentioned, should they decide not to put a bungalow there, that it reverts back to 35%?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we can structure the zoning bylaws so that if it's a bungalow, the coverage is up to 40, and if it's a two-story dwelling, it reverts back to 35%. So we can dual zone it from that perspective.
Councillor, I would add exactly as we did with Royal Road through the stable neighborhoods, right? When they wanted the bungalows, and we said that if they were to build a two-story, then the new zoning would kick in on those two stories. So I would assume that we'd be able to do the exact same here.
So do you need something from us tonight to put in the motion, or is that understood that that would happen?
Mr. Waters, can you work with the applicant to have that be as part of the present recommendation that comes forward to council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, definitely. We will take the direction of Councillor Gallo and work towards that objective. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor, is that good?
That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next item, R2, property tax due dates and penalties. Recommendation that report number FIN 20-012 be received. 2, that the installment dates for the final tax bill of September 15th and December 1st, 2020 be approved. 3, that the council approve a modest monthly rate of 0.25% for penalties on taxes for the period of July 1st to December 31st, 2020. 4, that the council approve waiving the 5% one-time penalty on past due water bills for the remainder of 2020. And 5, that a bylaw be enacted to reflect these changes at a future council meeting. Council, would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Gilliland. Comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gallo.
Just a quick one on recommendation 3. I'm assuming we picked July 1st because it lines up with one of the payment schedules. Was it ever considered to put that to a point when, you know, this whole mess started, end of March or whatever earlier date? Was that ever considered?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the reason July 1st was considered at this point was because under the emergency, we included the waiving of penalties on taxes to the end of June 30th. So July 1st was the next date that we'd be making a recommendation for going forward.
Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson. And council, I'll ask Councillor Thompson, sorry, and I'll ask if you guys can unmute yourselves moving forward. It just makes it much more easier process.
For sure.
Thank you.
Through you to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. Right now, the report, which is well thought out and reasoned, and I certainly support the rationale behind your recommendations. It's applied universally across the town, and I'm just wondering about those that were in arrears prior to the start of the year. I mean, I question whether or not they deserve these kind of relief measures, given that they were already owing money to the town and may have owed money for the town for quite some time. On page 3, table 1, you talk about arrears of $7,650,000. Is that those people that prior to the start of the year had already owed us money?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that is the amount prior to the installment that was due on February 25th that was in arrears. So it may include some penalties from beginning of January and the penalties that were applied in February as well. But it'd be essentially close to what was being owing at the end of last year.
Counselor?
As a follow-up question, would it be possible if council decided not to grant relief measures to those that were already in arrears coming into this year to manage that in your department manually?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because it is a smaller group of accounts, yes, it'd be possible for us to manage that manually. Generally, when we apply penalties, we apply them across the board to past due accounts as an automated process. So if we do something different, it is a manual process, but I think this could be handled within our department.
Thank you. You know, I fully support relief measures for those that have been, you know, deeply impacted by COVID-19, but we do have some in the town that, you know, are in arrears for whatever that reason long before this situation arose. And I'm not sure why we should be providing them with relief. However, you know, if council agrees, you know, I'm fine to also give some discretion to the director so that, you know, if there is a legitimate reason why they're in arrears and it is somehow tied to current situation, that she can use her discretion. But otherwise, I'm not in favor of giving any more relief measures to those that have been past due amounts to the town. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I'm in favor of this. I think our residents are having, or many of our residents are having a hard time. I thank the director for this report. The only concern I have is that by not putting the penalties on the water billings, then what's going to happen is we're going to reduce the contributions to the water, wastewater, and stormwater accounts. And
Am I the only one that?
hi.
Oh, when Councillor, you're back. Yes,
No, I think
you disappeared for a
I
second.
think you lost me.
Okay.
I'm
Do
sorry.
you want to kind of start a little bit back to give us, because we missed out a whole piece there of what you said.
Well, this is the right thing to do, but I think we have to keep in mind that if we don't charge the water penalties, then we have less money going into our water reserves. And my main concern is the stormwater reserve, because we've already made a plan on how we're going to go over the next 30 years and remediate flooding. And it's just a comment, something we need to keep in mind and how that might affect our work going forward.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to clause 3, I would be in favor to keeping it as the status quo at 1.25%. I'm in the strong belief that we do provide relief measures for COVID-19 and those for those struggling because of COVID-19. However, I'd rather, my preference is to have those residents who are struggling in that capacity to go directly to staff and make their case. Or just simply state they're having challenges. By I think by giving carte blanche, no penalties or little to none, you know, why wouldn't people want to pay at a later date? You know, given that, you know, the latest information is our, you know, national unemployment rate is closer to 9-10%, and we have close to 19% that's unpaid. It's very disproportionate. So it tells me that there are people out there, you know, whether it be, you know, 9% variance or something a lot smaller, there'll always be people who will game the situation. And certainly we don't want to legislate for those people. However, it would make sense that if people need some relief, they just approach the town and we will be, you know, generous and compassionate on those grounds. But I just rather keep it at our status quo rate of 1.25, and for those who need it, we'll certainly grant it, but they should approach the town for it.
you, Councillor Kim. If I'll come back to anyone that wants to do amendment, I'm going to allow Councillor Gilliland and Councillor Humphreys to speak, and then I'll see if there's anything that wants to be put out there from any of you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just listening around the table. I think I've kind of, I guess, changed some of my questions because some pretty good points have been brought up. I thought the report was very well written and had some compassionate parts to it to ensure that our residents didn't feel like they were overburdened. It's a very interesting approach that Councillor Thompson had brought up about the delegated authority to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel to, I guess, decide whether or not they would require an extension or an exemption based on COVID-19. So thinking about that and understanding some of the circumstances, I don't think that's a bad idea. And I think that the delegated authority in this case would be something that we should consider allowing staff to do. As far as what Councillor Kim would suggest with the carte blanche, I never really thought about that approach, almost similar to applying for CERB or any other kind of funding with the government. If it's something that you can do, then can pay, then pay. And if you can't, then definitely you can apply. And I think it would be a matter of defining what that criteria is as far as applying and how to do it. And I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, and Ms. Van Kessel, how easy would it be to manage something like that for residents to apply to? And would it be a very vigorous thing for the residents to apply for?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if we wanted to go through an application process, we'd have to determine what those criteria would be under which we'd actually provide benefit. And for the taxes, we're talking here about the residents, and we're also talking about commercial property owners, so businesses as well. So we'd have to determine what circumstances would make them eligible, and then for whatever rate we would charge for those would be charge an alternative penalty rate. It would create a much more manual process and more administrative work for my team in actually applying the penalties. So that does create a bit more work in how we'd apply that going forward.
Councillor.
Interesting. Okay, so I guess listening to that, I kind of wonder if the cost of the administrative work and what we're trying to do to save is really outweighing the cost savings to versus just going carte blanche and making it more streamlined across the board during this time, considering it is for a period of 4 months, I believe. Is that what that is? 4 months? Oh, sorry, 5 months? 6. And it aligns with the region and everything else. I guess for just streamlining purposes and administrative, it probably in my mind would make sense just to keep it status quo as the 0.25. But I'm happy to hear what the other council members have to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you know, when I read this report and thought about it at first, it was like, yes, let's do it. But I'm wondering if it could be sort of, you know, come to the, you know, the people that residents that really need support can come to the town. I know it's going to be a lot of manual work and extra work for our staff. But I wonder if, you know, there are those that are able to pay and they're fine, and then, you know, that's fine. And if those that really can't, but because they're affected by it, can absolutely apply. So I don't know if there's a thought process and a methodology on, you know, the application process, or, you know, I know it's going to cause, you know, probably quite a bit of work at the front end, but it might be well worth it. Sort of what I'm thinking right now, but I'd like to hear any other opinions. It sounds like we're 50-50 right now.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Is there any other comments or questions? Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do understand there may be some administrative resources that are going to be used up, but I don't, you know, based on the last the deferment of water, it didn't seem like the uptake was as great as I had anticipated. And frankly, if anyone just approaches the town and says, hey, you know, I'm having a hard time, heck, that'll be enough. But if they have a record of employment stating that they were recently released from employment, that'd be good enough for me. I mean, we're not trying to give residents a hard time. It's just, given that we're going to have a $1.1 million deficit because of lack of late charge revenues, which is part of our budget, it would stand to reason that we would try to retain as much of that revenue as possible from those who can pay. And, frankly, just giving the town a call or just coming down to the office and, here's my record of employment. I was released last month or 2 months ago or last week. I'm sure staff can think of something quite expedient, but this exercise is not meant to be onerous or time consuming, but I'm sure we can think of something that's fairly expedient that will, at the very least, cause someone to pause before they want to defer something when they don't need it. So, I would favor maintaining the status quo, which is the 1.25.
So did you want to put an amendment forward, Councillor?
If everyone's finished speaking, I would like to put the amendment forward to just change clause 3 to just remove clause 3 really and just maintain the status quo.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, is that good enough if we just removed it and said keep status quo as far as penalties and on taxes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not the best procedural way to do this would be to an amendment to change the number from 0.25 to 1.25.
Okay.
And or at the end, if you could vote separately on the clauses too, and then that would be defeated. But for an amendment, I would say the 1.25.
Yeah, so Councillor, I would suggest that you want to amend this to the council approve, and I'd take the word out modest and put the council approve a monthly rate of 1.5% for penalties on taxes for the period of July 1st to December 31st, 2020. Is that fine for you?
That'd be fine for me. And do we need to add in verbiage to indicate that those who need relief can approach the town? Or is that will be a given that will be acknowledged and we'll send a communication to residents accordingly?
I think that would be a separate issue. So let's deal with this one first. Okay, so is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions to the amendment? Councillor Gallo.
I think if we go this route, we need to, as staff said, provide some criteria for those who do want to apply. Yeah, I don't think it's fair to staff to leave it open-ended and have them at their discretion decide who does and who doesn't. So if this moves forward, a criteria needs to be established.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Councillor Thompson, is your hand up for the original or is it up for the amendment?
It's up for the original.
Okay, I have you down for the original, so that's fine. Councillor Gilliland, to the amendment.
Hello?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm kind of sitting on the fence here, so I want to understand through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff about simplifying this process and understanding what that criteria is. Is it as simple as just, determining a couple small little tweaks to say, record of employment and yes, I need help, and make it not very onerous and less administrative? Or does it really matter how many questions you ask? Is it still kind of the same amount of work? I'm just trying to really understand the administrative part of it and the cost to the bearing cost of the town incurring the administrative. Is it going to offset properly to make it worthwhile, all the extra work?
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what we would want to do is we want to establish specific criteria under which people are eligible. Because under the Municipal Act, we have to be consistent in our application of how we apply penalties. So we just want to make sure that we have a very reasoned way in which we move forward with it. And it could be proof of some sort of higher level government support that the business or the resident is receiving to show that they are eligible for support in that manner. As far as applying penalties, so what would happen is if some are not having penalties and some are, it would really depend on the mix of what that looks like. We have close to about 7,000 to 8,000 accounts that we manage for taxes. And then we have about 8,000 water counts as well. So it's a fair amount of number of accounts that we deal with. So it will mean diverting resources to be able to manage just the application of penalties for anything that is a late payment, and then also going through and making sure everything's being applied consistently across the board and considering those applications.
Counselor?
Interesting. And so within that balance, and I know this is probably a question that you can't really answer top of your head, but dollar for what we're trying to do, which I would think is if we're trying to save money and where we can save money and get money where we can get money for the taxes, is that balance and all that work, really are we going to be in a gain on that?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it would not require hiring of additional staff. It may require some overtime. Right now, for the process that we have in place for people during their pre-authorized payment plans, or for the businesses that are applying for some relief as well for the deferment, we have our collections coordinator turning their attention to working towards that. So rather than them going ahead and making all those collection calls, what they are doing is they are going forward with managing some of these alternative payment arrangements. But if we were to look at what Councillor Thompson mentioned earlier, if we were to just apply the 1.25% to the what is currently outstanding in the previous arrears, the 5.3 million, if that was to stay constant throughout the year, that would be about $400,000 in penalties and tax revenue.
Counselor?
Okay, so the very last part you cut out on me. So could you just explain again? I'm sorry. Councillor Thompson, when he was explaining about the arrears, you're saying that we would be in a better spot if we gave you delegated authority to keep it status quo?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I was getting a message that my connection's unstable, but hopefully you can hear me this time. So the outstanding amount that we have in table 1 on the previous arrears, that's 5.37 million. So if we were to apply the original 1.25% to that for 6 months, we'd be looking at about $400,000 in revenue. So that would be arrears from prior to the COVID situation happening.
Gotcha. Okay. And if you were to do a metric system for application, is there time for you to come up with a plan and still implement this for the July 1 deadline?
Counselor? Sorry, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We would take some time before then. We'd have to come back to council at the end of June with a bylaw for the setting of the tax rates and the penalties. So we would include some criteria within that bylaw as to who would be eligible for a reduction.
Counselor?
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions to this amendment, to Councillor Kim's amendment? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. I just want to understand the dollar amount we're talking about here in the amendment. So if I follow the report correctly, on page 7, it says that if we were to, we essentially collect $600,000 in penalties from the period July 1st to December 31st at that 1.25% rate. Is that correct?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just getting to the page. So for the penalties for the period that we're talking about for the latter half of the year, as per the financial implications on the bottom of page 8, what we have forecasted is in the budget is $615,600 for taxes on penalties.
Right. So, and if we only charge the 0.25, then we'd get about 100,000 back. So the difference between the 1.25% and the 0.25% is about $500,000. Is that fair to say?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the amount that was calculated here on the 123,000, that was based on previous year's behavior. So
Yeah.
given the situation with COVID, it is likely to be higher than that.
Okay. I guess I'm just trying to understand the financial impact, because on top of that, you mentioned that if council decides not to grant these relief measures to those already in arrears, that's an amount of about $400,000. So if we do back them out of this change, we're probably only talking about maybe $100,000 to $200,000 in terms of tax collected between the 0.25 and 1.25. Would that be a fair guess?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming I've got this straight. So if we were to only charge the 1.25% on the previous arrears, that would be roughly about $400,000 that we would collect in the second half of the year for penalties on taxes. If we were then to charge like 2.25% on everything else, then it would be roughly around $100,000, or it could even be less because part of that would be duplicated.
Councillor?
Sure. So, and that's why I'm saying, so then instead of us losing 600,000 in some, you know, we're looking at anywhere between 1 and 200,000 is a fair guess.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that'd be a fair estimate for the balance of the year, for the second half of the year. The penalties on taxes that were waived from March 20th to the end of June, though, those would not be recovered.
No, understandable. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the amendment? I'll call a vote. All those in favor of the amendment? Sorry, you don't see my hand. Can everyone just put up their hands in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. That carries. So back to the main motion as amended. Councillor Kim, Mr. Clerk, how much time did Councillor Kim have left? Because it was the second time. I don't want to. And if Councillor Kim, do you have anything else to say, or are you done? You're done. Thank you. I go to Councillor Thompson. You're next. Second time.
Thank you. I'll put forward that amendment that I spoke about earlier. At the discretion of the Director of Finance, accounts that were in arrears at the end of 2019 not be eligible for further relief measures. And as Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel just said, you know, that's about $400,000.
One sec. I get a seconder, so it's on the floor. Seconder, Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Thompson, amendments on the floor. Go ahead.
You know, as Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel said, you know, that's about $400,000. You know, there may be the occasional account that there's some sort of reasonable or justifiable excuse why they were in arrears at the end of the year. But you know, I'm confident that those situations will be few and far between, and Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel can handle it at her discretion. At the end of the day, I mean, you know, these are taxpayers' dollars, and we're helping those that need the help. But if we have accounts that have been in arrears for a considerable amount of time, I don't necessarily feel the same need to support them because they haven't necessarily been paying their fair share in the town.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Got Councillor Gilliland to the amendment.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. I was just going to express my agreement with Councillor Thompson's amendment. I do support that delegated authority to finance to determine which accounts need to be penalized, I guess, as usual is the term, and I have no problem with that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I'm supportive of this. It's something that we knew before COVID and the scenarios that have happened after that. So it only makes sense that we just move forward with that. This is taxpayer dollars, and the ones that are, you know, the individuals who continue to pay their taxes because they can do. And I think the ones that can and aren't, it's a different story. So on time is what I mean. So I completely support this. And I can't help thinking of a funny story, but my dad who pays rent, he said, oh, I'm not going to pay rent because I'm okay. I don't need to pay. And I'm like, no, you can pay. You have money in the bank and you're paying rent. And I made sure I called the landlord and said, my dad can pay. Let me know if you have a problem. So I'm not suggesting anyone thinks that way, but some people may think, maybe I can, and I just feel like a blanket is not appropriate. So I appreciate this. Sorry, I'm going back a little bit, but thanks.
I was going to cut you off because it wasn't really to the amendment, but I think we all appreciate.
I stopped
it. Sorry,
myself.
everyone. Thank you, Councillor Humphries. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. And just to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, do you need anything more from us? Or, do you need any criteria or does this amendment satisfy everything you need in order to implement it?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I think given this amendment, we would look for those that are receiving some sort of supplement for hardship from one of the upper tiers of government as a reason for providing relief. So with this, we would not be providing relief to anything prior to 2019 or that was in arrears in 2019.
Councillor?
So through you, that would be the criteria that you would use, if someone has already applied for any of the upper tier benefits, that would be sufficient to grant them relief.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's what we would use as the deciding factor as to whether or not we provide relief. So it would be based on the name of the person identified on the property for residential clients. So we'd make sure it's a person who matches the name on the roll. And then for commercial clients, there's also commercial business support out there. So we'd want to make sure that it aligns with that as well.
Councillor?
Okay, yeah, I agree with that, and I support this. Anyone prior to 2019 shouldn't necessarily receive that relief, and the criteria that's being used is fine with me.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kemp?
Thank you. I'd be in support of the amendment. Through you to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. How much of those in arrears are just in arrears one billing cycle and versus someone who's been in arrears for multiple billing cycles? I just asked that question in the context of the likelihood of being able to collect anytime soon.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have the details in front of me, but I imagine they are multiple cycles in arrears. Normally, when we apply payments, we apply to penalties and latest payments first, rather than the most recent payments. So for them to be to have arrears of that amount, then it's usually multiple cycles. It usually includes water bills also being charged to the property tax accounts as well.
Thank you.
Councillor?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'll call the vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Hands up. Opposed? That carries. Back to the main motion as amended. Twice. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Thompson, you still have the floor if you want it. No. Councillor Gallo, second time.
Thank you. I just, when we're voting, I'd like to, if we could separate, I believe it's.
Is it clause 3, the one that was changed?
Yes, 3, please.
Okay. All right, Mr. Clerk, can we separate clause 3?
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other comments or questions, I will call the vote on numbers 1, 2, 4, and 5 first. Oh, and with the amendment as well. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I saw you pop in there. Yes, with the amendment as well. So that would be Councillor Thompson's amendment. All right, Mr. Clerk. Oh, actually, don't have hands up, Terry. This is not, this is GC. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Number 3 on that one. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. All right, moving on. R3, blue box transition to full producer responsibility. It's recommended, 1, that report number OPS 20-008 be received, and that the timing for transition of the blue box program to full producer responsibility for collection on December 31st, 2025, coinciding with the end of the current waste collection contract, be approved. 3, that staff be authorized to continue working in cooperation with the northern 6 municipalities in providing blue box collection services on behalf of producers through future long-term collection contracts subject to mutual agreeable financial and operational terms. 4, that staff be authorized to communicate this resolution to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, to the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, and the Regional Municipality of York. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Gardner. Comments or questions to this report? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I guess through you to Mr. Downey, I just want to understand the rationale behind waiting until 2025. You know, as the program currently is now, you know, the town pays for 50% and the producers pay for 50%. And yet we're going to transition to 100%. And while the report does state that, you know, it's difficult to quantify the financial benefit because some of it is produced as in-kind services, I got to think that the amount the town would get would naturally increase whenever we go to full responsibility by the producers. So why wouldn't we be looking to transition earlier if the town would receive more money to help offset the cost of the Blue Box program?
Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that's the number one question that we've all been asking. So we've had several meetings, and when I say several, probably a dozen, with the region and our N9 partners. The main concern here is the lack of information. The province has not been forthcoming with enough information for us to make what we feel is a clear recommendation to our respective councils. A number of outstanding questions. I've attached many of the frequently asked questions with regards to Blue Box transition with my staff report, but the province has not provided us with what we feel are sufficient responses in order to address what we identify as a critical service level to the community. We don't deny that there will be some financial benefit, but it's the impact of the service that we're mostly concerned about. People want to know that if they put their blue box out, will it be collected? And we aren't sure that it will be. We don't know how often it'll be collected. We don't know what will be collected. We don't know whether there'll be a penalty involved with it. We don't know who will be collecting it. There's a number of things that we don't know. So we wanted to make sure that we had a service that was somewhat seamless to the residents of Aurora, as well as the region. And that's why we are recommending going to a future phase.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I agree. I mean, you know, service is the paramount question, and you certainly want to make sure that it's same or better going forward. I just, you know, I guess I would like to get a better understanding, because based on the table in the report, I mean, the difference between the cost and what the town receives is about $350,000 a year. And so if you wait till the third year to transition, essentially you're leaving $700,000 on the table, as opposed to going in the first wave. But you know, I know there's contract costs, and like you said, there's so many questions unanswered in service. And so if we make that commitment, I guess now, as more information becomes readily available, are we still beholden to that 2025 date?
Through you, Mr. No, we're not. In fact, we're only providing an indication to the province as to how we would like to transition. It is ultimately up to the province who transitions and when they transition. AMO has asked us to give them some indication provincially as to what municipalities would like to go and when they would like to go. And so we are responding to that request. They will be putting forward those requests to the province. However, ultimately, the province will decide who goes and when they go, and they'll be going over a 3-year period. 33% of the province each year in 2022, 23, 24, and 25.
Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Microphone.
I got it.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So it really doesn't matter what we decide because the province is at the end of the day going to decide for us. Is that correct from what I'm getting?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We have been requested by AMO to put our preference in. However, our preference is only an indication of when we would like to go. The province has the ultimate say.
So we might have to terminate our garbage contract earlier. We may not have a choice. Do you know how much that would, do you know what the penalty is?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that's been a conversation with the N6. As you know, the N6 have a contract with the GFL, and there is wording within the contract which identified that we may be transitioning out. However, we are not sure ultimately what the service level is going to look like. And so I am not in a position to tell you whether or not there is or there isn't a financial issue and to what level that is. We're not sure, as I say, we're not sure what the province intention is. They may ask us to be their contractor to pick up Blue Box, but we don't know. We do know that we will be in the Blue Box business regardless of the transition, as long as council has directed us to pick up ICI, because ICI is not identified in the province's service level. So if the Council for Aurora wishes to continue to be a provider of Blue Box service to ICI customers within Aurora, we will have to be in the Blue Box business, and we'll have to sort that out through a contract.
Thank you. For anybody, just for anybody listening, ICI is industrial, commercial, institutional. That's correct.
That's absolutely correct. I'm sorry. That's correct. The province has said they will come in and they will pick up residential as well as schools. However, we don't pick up schools at this point, so that's a service level that's greater than we provide right now. But just to give you a nuance about things we don't know, there are many developments, not only in Aurora, but throughout Ontario that have ICI or retail on the bottom floor and multi-residential on the upper floors. How are they going to deal with that, and how are they going to differentiate between the retail Blue Box and the residential Blue Box? So as they say, there's a number of things that we continue not to have clear answers on, and that's one of the reasons we're recommending a later phase.
Thank you. They're going to change the blue blocks to pink boxes if you're retail, or something like. No, I'm being silly. But
well, it's interesting because we're having, through you, Mr. Mayor, I apologize, but it's been an active discussion. It might not be a blue box. It might be a blue bag. I mean, it might look at a different way of collecting material, and it might not be on the same cycle. Right now, we pick it up on a weekly basis. It might be on a 2-week basis. We're not sure. And if I could give council the answers to those questions, I would. But in the absence of them, that the best recommendation I can give you is to move into a future phase.
Thank you. There was a lot of detail in this report, so I may have missed this. full producer responsibility. So at first I thought it was going to be packaging, but are they talking about glass bottles as well as to be packaging?
Mr.
Or-
Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what's being collected is still under discussion.
Okay,
As you can appreciate, this is going to be province-wide. So what they pick up in the city of Toronto, that theoretically we'd be picking up in Thunder Bay. And so they haven't quite determined exactly what they are or are not going to consider recycled materials, and that's one of the concerns and the questions that we've been asking the province.
Councillor?
I've written many letters about packaging, and so I'm really glad to know that this is finally coming, but it does sound very complicated. So good luck, Mr. Downey.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gilliland, first time.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of my questions were answered by Councillor Gardner, so thank you for bringing up some of those questions, and Councillor Thompson. I don't know how I feel about waiting to the very end. At the end of the day, like you said, the province is going to tell us when we're going to do it, and from reading the report, it's a crapshoot. If I were to guess, they would probably do it on a regional level. If they were going to amalgamate and say, York Region, you're going to be the ones that are going to pilot. I think eventually we're going to be there no matter what. So whether it's in 2023 or 2025, to me, it's like it's not going to make too much of a difference. We can choose to actually be the leaders in this, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. Why not be the leader? I can't see the province letting us hang to dry and not give us the support that we need, and I don't see there's a reason why we couldn't advocate for starting this earlier.
Yeah.
Hopefully save some money while we are doing the transition. There is a lot of unknowns, and I think that they expect there's a lot of unknowns coming for this, but so long as maybe if we express maybe our opinion about starting this earlier, so far as we understand maybe some of the transitioning unknowns of the questions, like you said, to make us a little bit more comfortable. But I wouldn't want to completely say right out of the gate that, well, we're too nervous about what's going to happen, so we're going to just go wait till everybody else does it. I say be the leaders in it, and say that let's start this as soon as possible, and try to reduce the rate and waste as much as we can, and get these producers accountable for it. And I think we can do it. So that's just my opinion. I would advocate for starting sooner than later. I'm surprised that GFL, they must know this is coming. This is not a surprise, that they should have some sort of idea of what the penalties would be or not be. So the fact that we don't know, I think they know. I just think they're trying to figure out how they're going to make it a seamless transition for themselves financially. But at the end of the day, their service is going to be picked up on another end, and it's going to continue on somewhere, and it'll be a win-win for everybody. So I would advocate for the 2023, and let's be leaders in this era.
Are you proposing something, Councillor?
Yeah, I mean, I'll wait to see what everybody else has to say, but I would prefer to support an earlier 2023 start versus the 2025. But I'm happy to wait to hear what everybody else has to say first. If we want to go around and other councillors want to speak to that.
Anyone else want to speak for the first time? Well, Councillor, if you want to put something forward, that's fine right now, because all I got is Councillor Thompson and Councillor Gardner for a second time.
All right. Well, I would, instead of the 2025, I would say the 2023 transition. Again, like Mr. Downey had said, nothing is set in stone, but I think that we could be the leaders going forward in this initiative.
Okay, so the amendment is, can you state it for Mr. Clark so he can get it for us? What's the amendment that you're putting forward?
Just to change the date, the year, 2023, the earlier date.
Mr. Downey, did you want to, sir, and Mr. Clerk, do you have that?
Yes, we do. We'll just we'll put it up on the screen in just a second.
Hey, Mr. Downey, before I go to you, I'm just going to ask if there's a seconder. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor, I don't see a seconder.
That's a shame. I guess I'm alone on that one. Oh, Councillor.
Oh, wait.
Thompson.
Councillor Thompson put up his hand. All right. Councillor Thompson, seconder. Okay, Mr. Downey, did you want to add something in there?
So, and not to influence it one way or the other, I just want you to know, we are the last municipality in York Region to vote on this. And all of the other 8 municipalities have voted to go to the third, go in the last transition. So if Aurora chooses to want to go first, that's not a problem. We can make the region aware of that. However, the vast majority of the region has decided to go in the third phase.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo, speaking to the amendment.
I just wanted to hear from Mr. Downey in terms of his opinion. If we were to change this, what impact is there, if any?
Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the region's going to be preparing a report, as you may know, for June, and they are looking for their municipal partners to take a position. And so all municipal partners, we're the last municipality within the region to move forward with this recommendation. The report you see before you is a boilerplate report that has gone to all the other municipalities within York Region. At this point, from the information I'm getting back from our municipal partners, all the councils have agreed to moving to the third phase. I believe Markham has a clause that states that if possible, moving to an earlier phase, they would like they consider it. But they, as you may or may not know, have their own garbage contract. And so they would then gear their garbage contract to that earlier phase. Our contract coincidentally expires the same year that we would move into a transition. So that's helpful for the town of Aurora as well as the N6.
Councillor Garlow?
So what I heard is there's no real impact. I assume so.
Okay. Councillor Thompson, do you have your hand up for the amendment? No. Councillor Humphreys, to the amendment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a quick question to Mr. Downey. So if our contract is up at 2023, sorry, 2025, and we go with this, are there any penalties or anything of that concern?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the conversations we're having within the N6 is that any impacts on the contract will be minimized. We have an opportunity to extend the contract, provided there's satisfactory performance. So we would extend it with the understanding that we would be transitioning to the full producer responsibility in 2025. And so the financial impact would be, in my opinion, negligible.
Okay.
But anything prior to that, it's open for negotiations.
Councillor?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you. I find in municipal and regional contracts, this, a blue box and waste management is one area where scale is important. This is an area where I don't see a first mover advantage in a case like this, given the lack of, or the opaqueness by the province. We don't know what further benefits will be accrued in 2025. So I just don't see the first mover advantage here, moving by ourselves. I agree with Councillor Gilliland that it'd be great to be, a leader in this regard, and certainly in this blue box and waste management. It's, you always want to something like this to take the lead, but I don't see that can happen in this scenario. So for that reason, I can't support the amendment, but I do respect the amendment in principle.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Thompson, I saw your hand go off and then back on. Are you now on for the amendment? Yes. So you're first and then Councillor Gardner. Councillor Thompson?
Just to clarify, there is a benefit and there is an impact. As we stated earlier, our Blue Box program costs us over $600,000 a year. In 2018, it cost $650,000. In 2019, it cost $600,000. We're only collecting anywhere from $230,000 to $250,000. So there is a big gap. And by moving it up earlier and getting full cost recovery, then yes, there's a financial impact and a gain for the town. However, I am cognizant of the fact that there are concerns around the service level. I'd be fine with moving forward as early as possible, as long as there was some sort of, guarantee or assurances that, the service wouldn't be negatively impacted. Because, 350,000, 400,000 is a significant amount.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner, to the amendment. Oh, one sec, Councillor Gardner.
Oh, thank you.
I got you.
You got me. Thank you. I really appreciate the sentiment of the motion. And that's what I was thinking when I was reading the report, the cost savings. But sometimes it's not smart to be the first. Sometimes it's better to learn from other people's mistakes. It's just like, I remember I was told you should never buy the first model of a new car. Let the kinks get ironed out. So I would be voting against it just for that. I'd like to be in the middle of the pack on this, but it sounds to me like it's not going to happen if we're the only ones. So.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Kim, did you want to speak for a second time?
Yes, through you to Mr. Downey. I see the financial benefits, but it's just the uncertainty of the service levels that's not worth gambling on. And is there any way from your view of the roadmap and the radar, do you see how we can benefit from this, like a clear benefit in terms of when we start early, that we could negotiate a contract with GFL that maintain certain service levels? Is that something that, without a clear knowledge of that, is that something that we can really make the decision right here?
Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it's an odd for me because normally I would like to be able to come forward to council with recommendations and have the answers. Unfortunately, the province hasn't provided the answers. So I can't tell you how often they're going to collect blue boxes. I can't tell you what they're going to collect in blue boxes. I can't tell you whether or not they're going to charge us with contamination, and there'll be a fee associated with that. So that will happen with the financial impact. I can't tell you through negotiations with GFL whether or not there's going to be an impact or not. I would need to come forward to council to determine what their service level requirement would be for those outside of the provincial collection. So the ICI, and whether or not you wanted to continue that or whether you wanted to expand that. Of course, if you wanted to continue it, then there would be a cost associated with that. We would negotiate that with GFL. If you wanted to expand it, then there would be additional cost to that, which would go against any savings that would be recognized or realized with the collection of residential. Our main concern is service to the public, so that right now, if there's blue box put out, it goes away and people are satisfied. If for some reason that service level changes, and there's no guarantee that it won't, and that's where our concern is, and the province hasn't indicated what their service level is going to be, people will have an impact. And so regardless of whether or not there's a financial advantage or not, the service levels or the lack of clear parameters behind that service level, we are concerned with. And so that's one of the reasons that we want to hold off.
Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Downey. And that's, I think those are my sentiments exactly, in that there's a price for everything. And no one's going to give us municipal refund of $200,000-300,000 without cutting back on some level of service. It's a seesaw effective business, and I'd rather wait till 2025 and have the full weight of AMO and the region combined. I think there's more leverage in that way, given the uncertainties. So when I measure the risk rewards outside on waiting to 2025 and be aligned with the others, and given that we're the last municipality to vote on this, it seems that not to follow the herd, but it seems that everyone else has made their move and they've had their consideration and they come up with the same choices that we're facing, is that the uncertainty of the service levels. And so it seems that there is some authority and leverage and scale, and I would prefer to go with the staff recommendation and wait for the 2025 transition.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So what I'm hearing around the table is, I guess the big thing is the service level, and kind of being wary about, whether or not they'll go down. With that uncertainty is very concerning for everybody, and I can appreciate how that can be very concerning. And I do like what Councillor Thompson had said about, so long as there's the service levels are not negatively impacted. And I would hope that, I don't know if there's any kind of clause, maybe I would change the way it's worded, saying we would be willing to have collection changeover earlier, so long as the service levels are not negatively impacted, not necessarily put a year on it, something similar to Markham. So at least we're not, so we can say we're open to the idea of being earlier, so long as those questions and concerns are answered. And maybe that language should be changed in this amendment that I've put forward. I'm hoping that that's something maybe I could do. Could I change that?
Your amendment, Councillor.
Okay, well, I mean, I would.
If the seconder is agreeable to it, yeah.
Suggesting, instead of putting an actual date of saying, 2023, keeping that is, but adding a clause, we would be willing to entertain an earlier a rollout, so long as service levels are not negatively impacted.
So, Mr. Clark, did you get that?
Thanks so, Mr. Mayor. I just for clarification, I think we had, maybe Mr. Downey is best to answer this question, but I think we have to keep the date in there as the indication. So will we just maybe put the December?
Yeah, keep your date of the 2025, because I'm sensing around the table everybody feels more comfortable with that. But all I'm suggesting is adding a clause saying we would be willing to move up the roll update earlier, so long as the service levels are not impacted. Just so we're not saying we're not game. Should we learn from, say, somebody else in 2023 and we have a full understanding of what's going on, why, say that we're open to the idea, maybe 2024 is a year, and there is a cost recovery there that's beneficial for the town. And we do think we're comfortable at that time. Right now, there's a lot of unknown. So all I'm just simply suggesting is just not to completely close the door on the idea, but leave your date of 2025, but just adding a clause saying we'd be willing to look at rolling it out earlier, so long as the service levels are not negatively impacted, just to kind of add some sort of open door to the idea.
Councillor Thompson, you second that? You okay with that change?
Rather than amending the second clause, I just see it as a separate clause, as Councillor Gilliland just stated, that council is open to an earlier rollout date, subject to confirmation that there are no negative impacts to the service levels. Just have it as clause 2A.
That's what I thought I was saying.
Yeah, but as opposed to what's on the screen right now. So we're not amending the second clause, we're just adding a clause that essentially states that.
So can I just, for process purposes, we had an amendment on the floor. Can I ask Councillor Gilliland then if she would be willing to withdraw that amendment with the seconder's approval on that, and then she can put forward the new clause, new amendment. Is that fine? Just for this is a cleaner way of doing it, Councillor Gilliland.
Sure.
Did you want to withdraw your amendment that was currently on the floor?
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. You're okay with that as the seconder?
Yep.
Okay, so we've withdrawn that. Councillor Gilliland, you want to put forward a new amendment on the floor, which, Mr. Clerk, did you get the wording on that? And can you put it up for us?
Yes, I believe so. It's that council is willing to entertain an earlier transition date as long as service levels are not negatively impacted.
Councilor
Yep.
Gilliland, Thompson, you guys are good with that? Mover and seconder? Okay, if we can get that up on the screen. In the meantime, is there any comments or questions to that? I think we've pretty much gone through it, but if there is any more. All right, I will wait till it gets on the screen and I will call the vote on the amendment. Is everyone good with that? Councilor Gilliland, I'm going to ask one more time. Councilor Gilliland, Councilor Thompson, what's on the screen?
Yep.
Good. Okay, so I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Back to the main motion as amended. Councilor Thompson, you had your hand up.
No, I'll take my question
Did you wanna-
offline to Mr. Downey. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the main motion as amended? No, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. All right, let's move along. Actually, sorry, health break, everyone. 10-minute health break. 5, everyone wants 5? Is 5, everyone good with 5?
Yeah.
Okay, 5-minute health break, everyone. See you in 5.
8 till 9 was just review of last night.
Yeah.
Mr. Clerk, we ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. So we're going to move to item R4, electronic meetings for committees of council. It's recommended, one, that report number CS 20-010 be received. Two, that an amendment to the procedural bylaw to allow committees of council to meet electronically during the state of emergency be enacted at the May 26, 2020 council meeting. Three, that the provisions related to in-person attendance and in-person quorum of the policy for ad hoc advisory committees and local boards be waived to allow electronic participation by members of the committees. And four, that staff report back to council regarding the success of electronic committee meetings. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Gallo, seconded by Councillor Gardner. Comments or questions on this one? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I approve of this, and I'd also like to ask, we tried to get the Accessibility Advisory Committee to be able to have electronic meetings because of the difficulty of some of the participants getting to the meetings. So I noticed in the report that it might be something that could be continued. So I'm not sure how if it would be appropriate to suggest that now for the Accessibility Advisory Committee, or to just wait.
Councillor, so we wouldn't be able to make that decision. That would have to be a change to the municipal act from the province. They're only allowing for us to do it during a state of emergency to allow for remote meetings. So that's what's in front of us. We can suggest, we've done, but it's up to the province to make that change.
Thank you. I must have misread it. I thought it said that it might be able to be continued after the emergency is over. I must have misread it.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, Councillor Gardner, I think that's correct. I think the Municipal Act amendments were to allow council, who of course make the final decisions, to meet electronically. We've never tried an electronic meeting with the committee, and we think that even when the state of emergency ends, we could still hold in an emergency that isn't a declared emergency by the mayor or the premier. We could hold a meeting, let's say, I don't know what the circumstances may be, like a big winter storm or something. We could hold a meeting electronically going forward. We want to test this out. We want to report back to council about how it all goes during this time before council makes any final policy decisions about whether electronic meetings are a last resort in non-emergency times.
Great. I love the idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just two things. One, have we given any thought to potentially any of the members of the committees that may not have the resources to computer or whatever to help them out?
Councillor Gallo, I'll add that we've actually, through the Community Cares Action Team, have actually purchased 10 iPads that will be fully loaded with virtual capabilities, whether it's Zoom or whether it's WebEx, and those will be at our disposal after this pandemic as well. So we'll be able to utilize them for anyone that is in need for those purposes. So.
Yeah, so if there's anyone in need, let's try to make sure they have the ability to connect. Secondly is, I don't know if Newmarket has done the same. I'm really interested in getting JCC back up and running. And I don't know if this falls within this or not, but if anyone knows whether JCC and Newmarket is gearing up to have virtual meetings.
Mr. Clerk, do we know if Newmarket has done anything in regards to this?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't say for certain. Last I heard, they had canceled meetings, scheduled meetings until July or August, and we're holding special council meetings on an ad hoc basis. So I don't think so, but I can certainly reach out to them and see what their plans are.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just feel very disconnected with the fire services, and I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if you've been in contact, but I just I don't know how they're operating because I haven't been communicated with in terms of how decisions are being made.
Councilor Gallo will definitely look at trying to get us to have at least a meeting. I'll talk to Mayor Taylor, see if what Newmarket's looking at doing, and I'll make sure that he's aware of our decision of how we're going to move forward. So hopefully we can both align with those decisions, and we can have JCC at least one meeting, because we usually break for the summer, but maybe in these times we might meet a couple more times in the summer. Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Duran, just to confirm that, should the public want to delegate or participate in any way with the committee meetings, that similar to what we're doing now with council and GC, there'll be full capabilities to do that.
Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, absolutely. Very similar setups with delegations, and would be happy to have them for any meeting.
Great. And then I guess the only other question is that it states that really this will be in place for June, and then we break for the summer. Traditionally don't have committee meetings. But at the same time, you talk about the need for significant testing and making sure everybody's comfortable. Is there enough time to go through those motions, test, get everybody's comfort level, and still roll us out June 1?
Mr. Clark.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we think so. We've been in touch with committees anticipating this already. We've, as Councillor Gallo mentioned, we did reach out to the members first of all to make sure everyone's okay. We will have a member of a committee who needs to call in, for example, and she was okay with that. So we've done some work on this already, and we're proud of the results we've had with electronic meetings thus far, and we think our number one goal will be to make sure the members are comfortable, first of all, and then so far we have nothing to see that we can't do that in a few days.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. R5, town-initiated official plan amendment to consider outdoor swim schools as a permitted home occupation. Recommended, 1, that report number PDS 20-036 be received. 2, that the town initiate official plan amendment number 2020 to permit swim schools permitted home occupation in the official plan be approved by adding the following new clause to section 6.13, and that would read, notwithstanding section 6.13 AI and 4, respecting home occupations, outdoor swim schools may be permitted as a home occupation use in addition to related minor outdoor storage where appropriate and subject to the other policies in section 6.13. And that a new fee be added to the town's 2020 fees and charges by law for a minor variance for outdoor swim schools at a cost of $250. And 4, that the implementing official plan amendment and revised fees and charges by law be presented to a future council meeting. Someone like to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Humphreys, seconded by Councillor Kim. Comments or questions on this item? Seeing none. Nope. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I just have some questions for clarification. When this goes to the Committee of Adjustment, they're going to decide in individual situations on hours and number of staff and students. What happens after that? What happens if the operators of the business don't comply with the directions from the Committee of Adjustment?
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the approval will be subject to a number of conditions that the committee will specify before the final approval is granted. And following that, should the approval be granted, and if there are complaints regarding hours of operation or staff or noise, that would be dealt with through a bylaw department. And I will pass it over to Tasha Van Leeuwen to just indicate what the enforcement measure would be. She can respond to that.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be a notice, we would issue a notice of violation for non-compliance because it would be not compliant with our zoning provisions that were granted through the Committee of Adjustment. So we would issue a notice of violation, hope for voluntary compliance, hope that they do meet all the conditions set out in the variance, and if not, prosecute.
Councilor Gardner?
That's not always so easy. Thank you. And, you know, the reason I am concerned about this is because we're talking about quality of life of neighbors. And we are dealing with a business where safety is a high requirement. So I don't know if there's any way to make that stronger. I have two things I would like to change, though. With respect to having a pool, a business in a semi-detached home, because the homes are in such close proximity, their backyards that are in such close proximity, I don't think it's appropriate in that situation. Ms. Van Leeuwen, would you, or through Mr. Mayor, could you speak to that, Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Ms. Van Leeuwen? Or Mr. Waters, whoever wants to.
Or Mr. Waters, sorry, Mr.
Yes,
Waters.
I think
Waters?
yeah, Mr. Waters would be best to
Thank
reply.
you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. You know, there are some semis that do have pools. Granted that the separation distance between houses is narrower. However, I'm at the mercy of council to determine whether semi-detached houses should be excluded. I mean, it can work for both semis and singles, but if it's council's desire to exclude semis, then I'm fine with that.
Councilor?
Well, it's my desire to exclude semis. I don't know how council feels about it, but however you look at it, semi-detached homes don't have as large a backyard space, don't have any separation between homes. And I do think it could be a quality of life issue for the neighbors. And so I would like to exclude semis. The other thing I'm concerned about is on we're talking about the fees. It says that we're going to reduce the fee to $250. And that does not provide full cost recovery for the town. And the reason it's going to be offered is to help reduce the startup cost of a business. And to me, there's practically no startup cost to giving swim lessons. There's certainly a lot of startup costs with other businesses, but not with this. The pool is there. So if it's a matter of not recovering our staff for costs, I wouldn't be in favor of that. If anybody else would like to speak to it, or I could just make an amendment, perhaps.
I'll move to Councilor Gilliland first. She has her hand up,
Thank
so
you.
I'll go through. Thank you. Councilor Gilliland?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say, I mean, I did ask a lot of questions offline with this regarding, and I was really pleased with the overall report that came back and the solutions that were there, and not permitting as a business and doing the one-time fee of the $250. I think it really simplifies things and kind of gives these typically who are students who are trying to raise some money for secondary, post-secondary education and such. So I'm in favor of this, and I just really want to comment on what Councillor Gartner was saying about the semis. I can understand where you're coming from with that, but I look at the bigger picture. There's plenty of homes on Regency Acres that have that are semi-detached, that have rather large properties, and there's plenty of homes in the north east side of Aurora that are extremely large homes and yet have extremely small backyards and yet still have a pool and they're detached. So I don't know how you would differentiate from one from the other. I think there are these 4 criteria that staff would line out should really determine that. And I don't think anybody should be penalized that they couldn't have a pool and do some lessons in their backyard just because they are a semi. That's just my opinion, but I know where you're coming from. It's just looking at the broader picture of comparing lots to lots. I just don't think it's fair in this situation. And the startup costs as well. There's certainly startup costs to doing pools and maintenance and equipment and such. So I'll just leave it at that. I want clarity that it was a one-time fee, and that once that the minor variance has been issued, that it would carry over to the next homeowner. So whether the house is sold, this is something that carries over, and it's not a repetitive thing where someone's always going in and out of pocket. So through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Waters, if you can just clarify that and confirm that is the case, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Waters?
You, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is a one-time fee for community of adjustment. Stays with the home in perpetuity.
Perfect. So that was kind of like my big bone of contention. If someone was going to have a startup cost, there's some startup costs for them. But there is other things to consider with startup costs that I think these students have to endeavor with, maintenance and supplies and safety. And they'll also obviously have to comply with some safety and fence measures and such. So I think this is really fair, and I don't think we're really putting too many constraints on it, but we are putting some sort of a regulation on it, which I think is great. And it's a win-win. So I'm happy with what I see here.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other comments or questions on this one? Councillor Gardner, second time. Before I go to you, Councillor Gardner, is anyone, oops, sorry, is anyone wanting to speak for a first time? No? Okay, Councillor Gardner, second time.
Thought of it in those terms. Is it possible, I don't know if it's even, that's the right word. Could we put a yard size restriction on this? Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. I'm really thinking about the quality of life of the neighbors, and I don't know if anybody has ever lived next to a pool. But just having a pool can be an issue. And then having swim lessons on top of that could be an issue to the neighbors. Is it possible to put a size restriction on a yard?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the benchmarking work that we had undertaken did not have that requirement in it, but I will note that if it's going through community of adjustment, the neighbors on either side will be advised of the application, and if they have a concern, they can definitely come to the meeting and speak to their concern.
Councillor?
Thank you. That's a good point. With respect to the fees, I mean, I understand again about students, but you know, we've lost so much money in this COVID situation. I don't think it's appropriate to give. I know at one point we were going to do it and I would have agreed then, but at this point, I don't think it's appropriate to give that discount. So I'll try and make the amendment, and if nobody goes for it, I'll have to vote against the motion, against the recommendation.
Your amendment is, Councillor?
The amendment is that full fee is charged for this?
So full fee for committee of adjustment?
Correct. Well, sorry, I should ask, what is the full fee? 250 is the suggested fee.
Mr. Waters, what's the full fee for an application voted before committee of adjustment?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's over $2,000.
Whoa.
Yes, Councillor Gardner, did you still want to put that amendment forward?
I think I better, no. I need to think about it till the next meeting, but I think there has to be somewhere between 250 and that larger sum.
Okay, so how about you give it some thought, and then next week you can always pull this and
Thank you.
make it. Thank you. Any other comments or questions to this one, Council? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. All right, R6, Aurora Economic Development Corporation Board composition. It's recommended, one, that the report number PDS 20-039 be received. Two, that the terms of reference of the Aurora Economic Development Corporation be amended to increase the number of local residents or business owners to 9 and to decrease the number of council representatives to 2 members of council. And 3, that staff be directed to present to council a special resolution to be passed by the AEDC Board of Directors to increase the number of local residents or business owners to 9 and to decrease the number of council representatives to 2, which will be confirmed at a future meeting of council. Would someone like to put forward a motion of the recommendations? Councillor Humphrey, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions on this one? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I'm fine with what's on the floor. Once this has been changed, when is the advertising for this position come out? Because I know that there has been a vacant position for some time, which still has not yet been filled. And I don't know if I've ever seen an advertisement for it. So I'm just kind of wondering what the process is once we make this change and how we go proactively filling this position, these positions.
Mr. CEO, did you want to answer that one?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. The board had purposely chosen to leave 1 seat vacant until the completion of the strategic planning exercise, and because they wanted to see if there was expertise from a particular area that would support the economic development strategic plan. So that's why the 1 vacancy was never filled and never advertised. And now as they move forward, they do want to go ahead and post in June for both of the vacancies that would result if this motion is passed.
Councillor?
Okay, that's I just really want to understand like the process and how we fill it, just knowing that it was empty. So if there is any residents who are interested, just knowing that there'll be some advertising in June, it's good for the public to know. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions to this one? All right, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. All right, notices of motion that will be dealt with next week. We have one from myself and one from Councillor Thompson. New business. I will work around the room. Councillor Kim, new business. No? Okay, Councillor Thompson. New business.
I just wondered if we've communicated to the public about, when town hall may open or some of the other facilities.
Okay.
And if not, when do we plan to do so?
Mr. CEO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're still waiting for clarification from the province as to when they will allow all the remaining workplaces to resume somewhat normal operation. So right now, we're suggesting that is not likely to occur until June. And so that's what our planning is based on right now, sometime in June.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, new business. Councillor Gardner? No? Was that a no? No? Okay, sorry. Councillor Gilliland? New business?
Hi. I just wanted to say great job from staff and Councillor Gallo and Councillor Humphreys for a very successful arts discussion table that we hosted last Friday. And we had the privilege of having Honorable Lisa McLeod and MPP Michael Parsa attend. And we had very good turnout, and I thought it was very informative, and I look forward to having continued discussions. So I'm very proud that we're able to move this forward, and I want to thank everybody for their hard work.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gallo, new business?
Just wanted to throw it out there, perhaps to Ms. McDougall. I'm not sure who. We have many youth right now that are at home, not doing much, and are suffering much like many of us. I was hopeful that staff could put some thought towards if something can be done for them, some volunteering, something to get them once it's safe to do so, out and active. I know in my household, it's been trying, and I'm sure many others, but I'm curious to see if any thought, if it isn't, let's just keep it on the radar and see if there's anything we can do.
Ms. McDougall?
Just in short, happily, I'll pass this information along to our staff. I know that the staff recreation programmers are diligent about pulling together different youth and teen initiatives virtually. They had a fabulous youth week last week with some initiatives that the youth could engage in. And certainly they're always open for new suggestions. So I will put that out there and just let them know, maybe to push a little further with our communications division, some other initiatives. And when we do get up and running with regards to events, obviously pushing for volunteerism is top of our mind as well, because we do need their support. So we'll add that to the list as well to remind them. Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you. Sometimes they're left behind, and I think it's important for them to keep their mental health as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Humphreys, new business. Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Humphreys has disappeared. All right, well, move along. Public service announcements. Councillor Gallo, I'm going to go the other way around this time.
Over the past 2 months during the unprecedented and changing times, parking restrictions in Aurora have been temporarily lifted. However, due to increasing activity as businesses begin to reopen, parking enforcement has now been reinstated. Please be aware of parking signage that indicates no parking, accessible parking, fire route, 3-hour parking limit. Additionally, all residents are reminded of the town-wide 24-hour limit of vehicles parked on the streets.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Councillor Gilliland, public service announcement.
Sorry, getting to it. I'm just waiting for the for it to open. Okay, each month the Town of Aurora's online Skylight Gallery features a new exhibit. Throughout the month of May, you're invited to enjoy the photographic work of artist Stephen Sloan. It is Consider This Its Only Natural exhibit. This online show captures the beauty in nature and invites the viewer to take a moment to appreciate all things this world has gifted us. To view this exhibit, please visit aurora.ca/Skylight Gallery.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gardner, PSA.
Looking for ways to keep active and engaged at home? Check out our Recreation at Home webpage. This page is a curated collection of helpful, healthy, educational, and fun ideas for the whole family to enjoy while staying at home and physical distancing. And you can get more information on that at aurora.ca/REC at home.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Help the town of Aurora document the pandemic. The Aurora Museum and Archives invites you to capture this moment in history by taking a front yard photo and posting it on social media with the hashtag Aurora at Home. Photos will be added to the town's archive and used in the future to help tell the story of Aurora's hashtag COVID-19 experience. If you don't have social media, no problem. Submit your photos using the upload tool at auroramuseum.ca.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kemp.
Are you an Aurora business owner that needs assistance during these unprecedented times? We invite you to use our new online business assessment tool to request information on available resources, as well as arrange to speak with an economic development officer for further assistance if needed. For more information, visit aurora.ca/business support.
Thank you. And Councillor Humphreys, welcome back.
Hi, sorry about that. Lost connection. Okay.
Do you have a public service announcement?
I do. The town of Aurora recognizes the significant impact that COVID-19 has on our community and has brought together community leaders from the Aurora Cares Community Action Team. The team, through the team, one-time financial support is now available to qualifying individuals and organizations. For more information and to fill out the application form, please visit aurora.ca/Aurora Cares. So that's an exciting opportunity for those in need in our community. Just another note, not 1,000% confirmed, but the Aurora Farmers Market may be opening this Saturday, May 23rd. So I have an unofficial note that public health was the last step. It looks like it's a go. I'll be able to provide a formal update tomorrow morning that we'll be having our farmers market. Lots of information to follow. Worst case scenario, they will be opening the following Saturday, first weekend in June.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Humphries. And I'll be looking forward to that. Hopefully go ahead tomorrow and we can get that information out to the public so that they're aware that it will be open if that's the case for this weekend. That's great news. So I guess I'll finish up with one. As many businesses begin to reopen, we recognize the unique challenges faced by the retailers in Aurora's historic downtown. To help encourage contactless transactions and supporting local retail, curbside pickup will be allowed at all times on Yonge Street from Church Street to Wellington Street during COVID-19 pandemic. Residents are reminded to please safely park your vehicle along the street, turn it off, pick up your items, and promptly leave to ensure you are not impeding traffic. With that said, everyone, thank you for the meeting. I will ask for a motion to adjourn, but before that, everyone stay safe and stay healthy. So with that being said, motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gardner, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.